It has happened for the first time in Citi Field history. The New York Mets have clinched at home. I was there, and boy, what a sight to behold. Tears were shed. So much reaction to a magical NLDS, a magical playoff run on the Mets Magic podcast. And we'll do it coming up next as we look ahead to the NLCS as well with Wardy, Ty Ward, Mets YouTuber. He's going to join us right here on the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic Clincher Edition. Let's go.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss. Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Mets Magic with Jake Brown.
And it's in there, strike three called. The Mets win the pennant. The New York Mets have won the National League pennant. Put it in the books. The New York Mets, for the first time in 15 years, are champions of the National League.
The sickest New York Mets podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome to the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. I'm your host, Jake Brown, at Jake Brown Radio, at Sick Pod Mets. Smash that thumbs up if you're watching live on YouTube or you're watching this back on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up, comment below, put some pumpkins in the chat right now. I told you it was Orange October, down with the red. And the Mets committed bloody murder on Red October. It's the month of the pumpkins. It's the month of ghosts. It's the month of the ghost forkballs and everything revolving around the Mets and their orange pumpkin and Pete Alonso and the captain, who should be the captain, Francisco Lindor. Jake Brown here. Wardy will join me in a second, and I just got to say, Thursday, Wednesday, I don't even know. I'm delirious. I don't know what day it is anymore. Does it even matter? Because our New York Mets, our beloved 2024 Grimace, Gay, OMG remix banger today with Pitbull, whatever you want to call it, Seymour Wieners, the Rally Pimps, the Glizzy, the Dogs, every storyline in sight. But the biggest storyline came at shortstop. And in the biggest moment possible, the shortstop, who's not going to win MVP, but we all know he is the MVP. The trophy won't matter. We'll make him one. The fans will give him one. And soon enough, he will have a statue right next to Tom Seaver outside of Citi Field if he continues this run. A grand salami to put the Mets ahead on Wednesday night. And I yelled out at a buddy of mine, Jimmy Duckett's, at open row in row 2, 124 row 2. We were chilling. Incredible seats. Appreciate him. And what a freaking moment. The Grand Slam, the biggest moment in the history of that stadium, and it's not even a debate. I was at the playoff games. I was at the World Series. There was no moment that was like that one. And the building shook, and rightfully so. Edwin Diaz, after scaring us all like he usually does, gets the job done. He says, settle down. Don't jump on me. I still have bad voodoo from that day in Miami in the WBC. But in the end, we all celebrated together on our field, the block party after, the fans coming around the ball, the players coming around the ballpark into the crowd. And a moment that hit home. Brandon Nimmo cried, and guess what? I did too. And I've said it before here. It meant a lot extra for me. 4 years hosting Amazing But True with Nelson Figueroa. Had a blast. They ended that show a week before the season. I got notified. I had to figure out the next step. Then in August, getting laid off on August 28th. August 31st, moving out of the greatest city in the world for the first time in my adult life, leaving a place that I want to forever call home and could not anymore because of the exorbitant prices and not having a job. Those two things combined, and I wasn't sure when I'd be back at Citi Field because I wasn't sure if this team was going to make the playoffs. Despite all the magic, we just weren't sure. They were not in a position at that time. They were game out, whatever the numbers were. They weren't locked in any playoff spot. I didn't know if there would be an October in Queens. And for them to end up playing the Phillies after I was at the watch party, Pete Alonso homer, another all-time Met moment, for them to play the Phillies while I'm living 15 minutes right now from Philly, and our guest I know doesn't live too far away, to beat them for the first time ever, just added an extra piece on this emotional, get the Kleenex ready, wipe the tears away kind of emotions of this run on a personal level. On an overall grand scheme, all of us Mets fans, it also is emotional because of how many times they were down and out. And I know everyone right now is going through something this year, whether it's being sick, losing loved ones, the Mets family, losing Ed Kranepool, lifetime Mets, losing Stearns, John Stearns, losing Willie Mays earlier this year. Everyone has lost someone important in their life. The Mets family have lost important people in our life. Our guest has gained someone in his life. And I know it means extra for him as well. And there, whether you were laid off like me, I know a ton of people in the business laid off, whether you're struggling financially, emotionally, this team has brought us all together as one Mets family. And the road is not done yet because they are 4 wins away from the World Series, and maybe we get a Subway Series World Series. And how apropos would it be for all of us, and really for me, the first full year I was a fan was 2000. The Mets played the Yankees. Being made fun of by Yankee fans our whole lives as Mets fans. The first full year, the last time the Mets clinched a playoff spot at home, NLCS 2000, 24 years ago. They went on to face the Yankees. Every team Buck Showalter leads the year after when he leaves, they go on a run and win the World Series or go to the World Series. Every team that beats the Brewers in the playoffs goes to the World Series. All these things aren't just a coincidence. It's real. And the road ain't done yet. But by God, if it does end after this round, it has still been a historic, magical Mets season that we're all so glad to be a part of. But let's go to the goddamn World Series. How about that? And I'll be covering here on the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic, Jake Brown, at Jake Brown Radio. Leave us some comments in the chat. And our guy will be covering it. He's taking over my spot now, the SNY post crossovers. I'm glad we have a suitable replacement. I trust him and his content and what he does for the Mets family. Tyler Ward, at Wardy NYM. Sorry for that soliloquy, but, I know it means something extra to you. Adding a member to your family, the first year is part of the family. The Mets are going on this magical run. I gotta imagine, Wardy, this does mean something extra special, despite all the obvious stories of Grimace, the comebacks, the magic. It's got to be extra special for you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jake. What an intro, first and foremost. And I know that this has not been the most optimal year for you, as has been the case with everybody, even myself as now a new dad of what's bound to be 4 months in a couple days, which I'm very excited about. This has been the most challenging year for my life personally for various reasons outside the Mets. But to your point, exactly right. The Mets are what is bringing everything together. And I think a great example of exactly that, because this is something that I at least haven't done too much. I did it maybe one other time a couple years ago in the regular season, but I was speaking to our good equal friend, Mark Luino, yesterday. And Mark had told me he was at the game as well. And I asked Mark, all right, who'd you go with? He said, no one. He's like, I just went and I hung out with whoever was around me. He's like, I didn't know anybody and it didn't matter. Everything was fantastic. He's like, I had a couple 6-year-old ladies freaking out about where I was standing in life because I pretty much blacked out after a Lindor grand slam. But outside that, everything was fine. I think that was just a prime example of, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your current status is. If you're a Mets fan, everyone's family. And I think it's really cool to see how much is blossoming into a more special thing than I've ever witnessed in years past as a fan, because you say now you're just outside of the Philly area. I'm just over an hour out of Philly. So growing up, all I've been around is Philly fans, right? Some of my closest friends are Phillies fans, which is what made it so sweet over the past couple of days, obviously. But to kind of see that, even in circumstances where, okay, it's not the most ideal, you obviously want to be around everybody, but it's okay because we're all dancing by our own. We're all dancing in our own room. We're all Pete Alonso standing on that damn table, absolutely sloshed after they clinched the NLCS. Like, that is just the vibe in Mets land right now. And I'm so happy to be talking to you, Jake, on October 11th. Playoff baseball for the Mets still. This is my first time as more than a fan and as a creator now, too. So I'm experiencing it from both sides of the coin, what that is like. And while it's a lot to balance, it's certainly something that I'm not regretting whatsoever. So I'm excited to get into this conversation. And I feel like anything regarding the Mets right now, you just have to be smiling cheek to cheek, just like Mr. Smile himself.
Yeah, for 20 years now, you've been around these clowns, these fools, these people who boo when Brandon Nimmo gets hurt, when they boo injuries. I was at the bank on Sunday. I couldn't believe my eyes. I didn't get tortured. I didn't get hit. I didn't get spit on.
Were you repping Mets?
I was repping Mets. Well, I
Okay.
wore the Amazing but True shirt, which they didn't know, but I had the Mets hat, but I had the gray City Connect hat. So I didn't go too crazy.
Right,
I
right. It
wasn't
was a
in
little
disguise.
subtle. You just had to look. You just had to like take a moment and be like, oh, all right, Mets fan. Gotcha.
Well, the guy next to me said Saturday he went in Mets gear and got like harassed, and Sunday he came. He was like, "Oh, you're Jake Brown." I'm like, "Yeah, nice to meet you." And he's like, he was in a black shirt. He was just no Mets. I couldn't tell what fan he was, and he got scared, I guess, from Saturday. I didn't have that experience, but I didn't go too crazy orange and blue. I didn't wear the OMG shirt, which I wore a couple days prior, because there were people tweeting, Philly fans saying, "I want to bomb the OMG sign," and I was not trying to get bombed. Maybe off surf sides and drinks, but not trying to get bombed by Phillies fans.
You're exiting Citizens Bank Park and they're just throwing grenades your way. Like, get out of here, bud.
Who knows?
Exactly.
You know,
yeah.
they throw snowballs at Santa Claus, maybe bombs at podcasters. Who knows?
I'll have to talk to you off air because I spoke to a buddy at the Mets Philly game around a month ago. That's when Sevy gave up the 2 bombs to Harper. We dropped that game after being up 4 or 5-0. And that fan was telling me how there are specific spots right there in Philly, like right where you are, for Mets, for Knicks, for everything. So in case you don't know that, I'll have to try to put you on, because that's even something I'm planning on doing as we get in Knicks season. Because I'm not, as much as I love the Garden, I can't go to as much as I would obviously want. Same for you, I'm sure. Just easier said than done.
Yeah, believe me, I'm gonna miss it. I need to find spots because I was in Center City. Now I'm actually in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It's about 15 minutes away from Philly. And there really ain't nothing here. I mean, there's nothing with it. There's Vito's Pizza about 0.6 miles away. It's like the worst pizza I've ever had. So it's not the greatest. But listen, we are in this together, and I think they've brought us all together. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that thumbs up. Yuki, yo, Jake, love you, buddy. Who you want, LAD or SD? We'll talk about that in a bit, who we want. We'll have an answer in about 12 hours. What's up? McNeil, an interesting answer. Mendy had an interesting answer about McNeil. We'll see if McNeil comes back. I really miss the Amazing but True podcast. Edwin says, what's good, Wardy? NLCS, baby, who you want to face? So we'll get into that, but let's recap quickly. I know it's a little late now. Yesterday, with a lot of emotions flying high. It was funny. My Uber driver from Philly to Cherry Hill had a Phillies lanyard, had WIP radio on, and I had the orange Mets football jersey giveaway and a Mets hat on. And we almost crashed about 4 times, and I'm pretty sure it was intentional. The seatbelt in the back seat, there was nothing to plug the seatbelt in. So I feared for my life, Wardy, that I wouldn't make it to the NLCS because of the drivers. And I'm sure you've experienced similar when you don your Mets gear in Pennsylvania.
Oh my, yeah. I mean, I went to my dentist yesterday, and I'm glad they didn't realize it till the end. But before I was walking out, they were just like, "You really walked in here in this outfit?" It was pretty much the same as yesterday. I was like, "Yep." I'm like, this is now the time to do it. And I said, because there's nothing you can do about it. Like, this is the time where, unless a Philly fan gets like erratic and is really, really pissed off and swings at you or something, they just have to swallow their pride, because they shot themselves in the foot. It's the fact that the Phillies lost the series in a fashion where they have themselves to blame. It wasn't like, oh my goodness gracious, the Mets somehow, some way rallied back and won, in the best of 5 series in that game 5 in Philly. You know what I mean? Like, the circumstances is what killed Philly fans from the start, because the team didn't show up. It's as simple as that.
And, Cassie talked about we were the better team. Well, listen, since June 1st, the Mets have been the best team in baseball. The Mets have been better than the Phillies. And in the matchups head-to-head, they were pretty much better. I mean, you can argue the Mets are just better than the Phillies. I know the Phillies had the better record, but that's because the first 2 months of the season, they were far better. But the season is not decided in the first 2 months. My dad always says, I'll check the standings after the All-Star break. He doesn't love baseball like he used to. He used to take me to games. He doesn't love it the same, but he's kind of right. And for the Mets, that's been the case. It didn't really matter until maybe it was June, not after the All-Star break, but it didn't matter that the Phillies' first 2 months, how, I've seen the screenshot of the Mets, how far back they were, how far ahead the Phillies were. But at this point, it's irrelevant. The Phillies are going home, and they're talking about here, what do we do? Is the window closed in Philadelphia? Is Alec Boehm going to be gone now? And they set off a lot of questions for that fan base, and it's thrilling as a Mets fan.
It really is.
Listen, they hate us, Wardy, more than we hate them. It feels like they want us to be punched in the face, where we're just like, we hope for a fun series. Maybe it's just because they hate New York. I'm jealous. I don't know what it is. But
yeah, usually it's envy. I mean, it goes from both sides, right? Especially with this being the same year the Knicks kicked the Sixers out of the playoffs. Like, we're really doing damage right now. I was at that game there in Philly when that happened. That was electric. And yeah, if you're a Philly fan right now, you're down in the dumps because it's been a continuation, and it shows you how Again, you don't need to have the best record. You don't need to win your division to be the best team. And 2 years ago, I've been referencing this literally since the expanded playoff because it's so accurate. 2 years ago, the Phillies just snuck in. The same year that the Mets are the single-handed reason why Joe Girardi was fired in that first half, because you got huge home run heroics from guys like Nick Plummer at home and all these other things happening, rallying back, and then you do your in-house hire Rob Thompson. They just squeak into playoffs and they go all the way to the dance. Yes, did they lose? But listen, they had no right to be there to begin with. So it's an amazing run that they had. Last year, Arizona Diamondbacks, same story. Just snuck into playoffs and that expanded wild card. They had their run. Now it's the Mets' turn and basically trying to do the history of what we've seen the past couple of years, but to hopefully do the entire thing, knocking on wood. And when I look at both the Mets and the Phillies, what's a more important sample size to the baseball fan? Is it 60 games or is it 100 games in the regular season? Because that's all you need to say when you're evaluating the two teams. The Mets did not just have the best record in Major League Baseball since June 1st, but they have the best clearly there in the NL East. So no Philly fan, unless they've been blind, and they were because they won the division and thought, oh my goodness, we're the best team, but they weren't paying attention to the actual context. I don't know why they disregarded the fact of them having a very lackadaisical summer. I know the players didn't because it definitely carried over into their postseason play. Either way, it's a great time to be a Mets fan. It's a terrible time to be a Philly fan, which means everything is right in the world.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And, they had, you said, like, it's their fault. It really was. You look back at this series, and game one came down to the 8th inning. It came down to the Philly bullpen, which plagued them this entire series. Zach Wheeler pitches a gem, bullpen implodes. Game two, the one I was at, they end up winning. Game three, that was just the Mets game. I mean, that was all Mets in game three. But once again, their bullpen was bad, and the Mets kept adding on insurance. And then game four, they're up 1-0. I know the Mets had a billion chances to score, but once again, their bullpen implodes. And, I said not to overlook, I know it's like shticky, but the whole light show when they change pitchers and everything that happens, that whole thing happened. They changed pitcher, the light show happens, and Estevez, the first hitter he faces, Francisco Lindor, it's a grand slam. And now, obviously, that's more Lindor and his heroics. But there's clearly a home field advantage that we've wanted, that we've needed, and I think the Mets are seeing it, that it helps the Citi Field atmosphere. It really does help. And these relievers in Philly were shook by either the music, the fans, the moving trains, the lights. I don't know what was going on. I know someone tweeted about Malik Neighbors being at a concert when concussion, maybe they were concussed. Who knows? But there is home field in Queens. And it's something we've been waiting, Wardy, for 9 years to be back in this building. Our lasting memory was the throw home that got away and the Royals winning the World Series. And it was in our heart for 9 years, and we're trying to push it out. And Francisco Lindor's grand slam was the first step of pushing it out, 4 wins away. That moment, man, I mean, I was there. You were watching. You were going crazy, I'm sure. I was going nuts, lost my voice. It was cinematic. It was out of a movie that you couldn't even write the script for. 2-1, 1 out, all day long. The bases loaded, runners in scoring position. I'm yelling bunt him over. Not Lindor, but Tyrone Taylor, bunt. Marte, give me a birthday bunt. He gets hit. The things that materialized that led up to that point, Wardy, that was the capper. That was I'm not going to have the trophy. I'm not going to get the award, but I know who I am, the MVP of this team and the overall MVP of this league. I don't care if you're not going to give it to me. And the smooth trot around home, the class personified by a father, a leader, a soon-to-be captain, and the face of this franchise. It all was just so damn special.
Yeah, I don't care if you're Quentin Tarantino, Martin Scorsese, no one, and I mean no one, could have written the story that has been the Mets this season. For the buildup to the context of that moment for Lindor, even just in that game itself, if we exclude all the previous games, just that game itself, to strand bases loaded the first and second inning, the way that the Mets did, because Ranger Suarez was working that curveball, no one could hit it. Finally, you saw Lindor in his third at-bat adjust to the curveball. He gets down and away, pulls that down the third base side, and you're seeing Lindor finally having his first, quality at-bat of the day. They bring in Carlos Estevez. Now, Jake, I'm curious how you were feeling about this, because when I saw Estevez come in, I actually wasn't feeling great. Even though that, yes, we were attacking the bullpen, this was the lone reliever all series that actually had the Mets number for the most part. He was nails against us in game 1 or 2, and then he was out there the following day, had himself a scoreless outing. This was the guy acquired from the LA Angels back at the trade deadline, a flame-throwing closer for them, and he comes in here to face Lindor, and all he needs to do to Francisco is to not throw him a meatball down the pipe. Doesn't matter that's 100-101. Same thing goes for Edwin, right? If you're going to have an elite hitter like Lindor, who's going to be sitting the entire time on that heater, just don't throw it. And that's exactly what he did. I mean, when I rewatched over and over, I'm like, I know Lindor got that as soon as he barreled it, but how middle was it? It was literally chef's kiss. I mean, everything set up beautifully for that moment because the Mets did have opportunities prior in the ball game where they were getting some hung pitches and they were hacking them away foul, or they were grounding into, not maybe any double play, but grounding into a ground out and not moving the runners over. So from the frustration in the first half of that ball game to what we saw there in the bottom of 6, you cannot write anything better. I'm very envious that you were at the game, but I'm so glad that fans like yourself and so many others that I know in the community that were there, because you guys are what make it as special as it is, because we're the same fans that have been through all the trials and tribulations with this Mets team, going back to not only the start of this year, but going back to the start of when Lindor first got here and defending Lindor when a lot of times that everyone's trying to go up against him saying, oh, he is not the guy. He doesn't have it, this and that. There are no more debates. There cannot be any more debates. Lindor is our captain and he's our MVP.
And that was in April. I mean, we had the whole thing of give him the ovation in April, get him back going like the Phillies did with Trey Turner. That was this season. I mean, I said this, I think, in the last show. People forget that this season that Omar Narvaez had a walk-off hit. If he doesn't do that, the Mets don't make it. And he was
still pisses me off. He was behind. He just poked that oppo. I was so glad when he got cut after. I was like, dude, screw this guy. I can't. I'm sorry.
When they signed him, we were like, this is great. He's going to be the best backup catcher in the league. And he ended up being the worst backup catcher in the league. And they got Luis Torrens for like less of a salary than I was making at my old employer. Like, I was like, we got this guy for dirt cheap. So this has just been a wild topsy-turvy season. And earlier this year was the time fans were booing, and I was never booing him. And listen, Lindor had a solid last couple of years. Not like he was a bum, but this year he is catapulted to the face of the franchise. And man, if they find a way to win a ring this year, and it just feels like destiny, that statue will be built at some point, and he could go in the Hall of Fame as a man. And listen, that's all down the road. We got a long way to go. You're watching on YouTube. He's at Wardy NYM. Subscribe, smash that thumbs up, comment. Some of the comments in the chat got Torrens for 100K. Yeah, dirt cheap. McNeil's in the Arizona League today.
Correct.
So let's talk about McNeil for a second, because that's interesting. I don't know who we replace, because do you really want to replace Acuna, who could be a late game defensive replacement, who can be a speedy runner? Do you cut up, do you take Danny Young off the roster and not have a second lefty? I mean, he wasn't used at all, so you could do that. What do you do? I feel like you kind of have to have McNeil on the roster just because he's Jeff McNeil, but what roster move makes sense to make that happen?
So I was listening to Mendoza's NLCS presser right before we got live here, and he had spoken on Jeff and said how, when asked, would the Mets consider being one pitcher short? And he said, yes, we are considering all options right now, because if you keep McNeil, you keep Acuna, drop one of the 3 options. Adam Ottavino, Danny Young, Huascar Brosban. All 3 guys who have been non-existent in this year's playoffs. All 3 guys that even in a best-of-7 series, I think that you could easily argue being without at least one of them. I know Huascar wasn't on the NLDS roster, but I think between Danny and Adam, you absolutely have to make that decision. Now, with Young, it's kind of an interesting one because the Mets don't have any southpaws in the bullpen outside of David Pearson, when Pearson's supposed to be your length guy. Not a guy that's supposed to come in for an inning, but rather you're going to probably have him eat at least 2-3 innings around that area, should he be in this role, which I think he will continue to be, with Senga starting, whether it's game 1 or game 2, we'll find out for the NLCS shortly. I think that's the route you go down, because even if Acuna gets little playing time in the NLCS, he is still enough of a valuable option just as a pinch runner alone. Not even if you bring him in as a defensive replacement, just as a pinch runner alone late in a ball game that could be a difference maker. I can't sit here confidently and say that either the relievers I just spoke to are going to go out there and perform for the Mets in the high leverage situations. Those are the guys I have the least amount of trust in or faith in. So McNeil, you need to have him here because I think Jeff is rejuvenated, now a father of 2 instead of a father of 1. That wrist is fine. He's going to be playing in full games there in Arizona. And then we start our series either in LA or San Diego. So he at least doesn't have a ridiculous amount of travel versus if he's flying all the way cross country back home to start things. So I like Jeff back. I do. I think he's going to be a Swiss Army knife for us as long as he kind of gets locked in right away. And I think you cut one of these pitchers. How do you feel about that, Jake?
Well, here's the thing. Ottavino does have the playoff experience. He is a veteran. Now, He also lets anyone and their mother steal a base, which is something in the playoffs, which is a much bigger deal in a one-run game. Now, when he comes in, you don't expect him to be in anything between a 1 and 4-run game. He's probably in a blowout, in a 5, maybe a 4-run lead is fine. But 1 and 3 runs, I don't think any Met fan is trusting Adam Ottavino. You have David Peterson in the long man. I don't think lefty's as big of a deal anymore because you have to face 3 batters unless you're ending an inning. So I'd say you probably leave Danny Young off. And Danny Young did have moments. He did struggle towards the end of the season. So he's never been there. He was kind of one of those shot in the dark, lightning in a bottle relievers that came out of nowhere for this team. And a lot of lightning in the bottle, guys who came out of nowhere with this team moments from these Mets. But yeah, I'd say you go down a pitcher and you got to keep Acuna. You need his late game defense. You need him as a pinch runner. I know they barely used him as a pinch runner, but if JD Martinez or, even Mark Vientos at first base, you're down a run, you might need a guy to swipe a bag. So I'd say get rid of Danny Young. But I'm not going to lose sleep if it's Adam Ottavino either. So it makes sense. And, Jeff's also got to be ready to, if they need to start him a game, he's got to be ready to play 9 innings and 4 at-bats. Everyone's like, he's good to go. He's at no game action. He's coming off an injury that he's supposed to be out 2 more weeks. So he's probably on the shorter end of that, 6 to 8 week window. I think he's closer to the 6-week mark. So you also got to make sure he's ready before being like, let's do it just because of the morale reasons. You need to use every one of these roster players. And if not, then he would be an option, hopefully, for the World Series. And to get to the World Series, Wardy, it will take beating their opponent. Now, we'll know in about 12 hours. Here's the difference, to me. The Mets 2-4 against the Dodgers this year, 5-2 over the Padres. I would want the Padres. I think the Dodgers scare me. Their lineup scares me more. I think their playoff experience scares me a bit more. Their manager, they've been there, Dave Roberts, everything about the Dodgers. Then you add the Ohtani layer because they're going to have Ohtani people getting tickets over, Met fans at Citi Field. Good for them, but we want all Met fans in the building. You're going to have Dodger fans and Ohtani fans taking tickets away from Mets fans. We don't want that. I'm a little bit more scared of the Dodgers. And, part of me, Wardy, wants revenge. 2022, I wanted to celebrate. I had to credential that game. I wanted to be in these champagne showers. I'm seeing all these videos, and I'm jealous of those reporters who you're unbiased reporters. I would have been the fan in there popping champagne with, I would have been chugging beers with Pete Alonso, and I might have got fired for it, but I would have enjoyed every moment of it.
Every moment until the last drop. Yeah.
I would have wanted that so bad. And for them to shut us down like they did, and really Chris Bassett, who blew it, and Scherzer's terrible outing, of course, that's what set up the blowouts. But I want revenge. What they did, Joe Musgrove, they are very hateable, and I kind of want to beat them. And the Dodgers, Wardy, scare me a bit more. Who do you want?
So I will start this by saying that there's no one that I want, because I feel like by saying that I want this, it's bad juju, and I don't want to throw that out into the existence. So for the times I've said it in the past, I retract. What I will say is when I evaluate both teams unbiasedly, Dodgers, in my opinion, are more vulnerable, and here's why. Their pitching staff has been absolutely decimated with injuries this year. And that's where I think a Mets team that has been pouncing on a bullpen, so much so they've scored 26 runs in 27 innings facing the opposing bullpens in this year's playoff thus far is a great example of exactly that. I see the Dodgers win 8-0 game 4 without Freddie Freeman, with Anthony Banda, Mets legend, pitching in the 3rd inning for LA, and the Padres can't hit a lick. That's insane. So, one, that game was nuts to me because that felt like the prime time for the Padres to finally slay the dragon again here, advance to the NLCS, and they couldn't do it at home. They completely choked. But if you exclude the Shohei factor, I think that there's ways to work around this Dodgers lineup a lot for the Mets, similar to what they did during the regular season. Even when Jose Butto couldn't command, it was fine because he was giving him Bonds treatment, he was giving Mookie Bonds treatment, he was giving Freddie Bonds treatment, and it worked. The Mets ended up winning that game, right? So I think that they need to be creative about this. The Padres I have concern with because they are more, in my mind, a team of destiny. They are similar to the Mets this year in their vibes. They've had a tremendous summer, one of the best teams in all the National League all summer long. They're also riding the coattails in their first year without their fallen owner and leader, and Peter Seidler, who in many ways is just like Steve Cohen, who was a diehard fan that wanted to do nothing but give back to the city and give back to Padre fans. So they're really trying to ride on that as well, all without Juan Soto, because it shows you that even when you have the best guys on paper, it doesn't mean it's going to amount to the success you're looking for. Padres have a deeper bullpen. They have a deeper rotation. And yes, they might have more boom or bust in their lineup, but Tatis is notoriously one of the best playoff performers around when he's healthy. Manny's doing Manny things. Let's not forget who, in my mind, is one of the best rookies, if not the best rookie in baseball in the National League, Jackson Merrill. He has been tremendous offensively, defensively. If I'm being frank, I think the Padres could end up causing more issues only because they have a lot of other factors that they faced adversity in a way where I can't sit here confidently and say that the Dodgers have outside their injuries. You know what I mean? Like, this Padres team has won through ups and downs this year, and they've come out of it, and they're a very confident club. I'm excited to see what's going to happen here over the next 12 hours or so, and we'll find out right away. But I think on one hand, you don't want to see all these endless Dodger fans at Citi Field. You don't want to see it all there a divide. That would be the difference between playing the Dodgers and the Padres. Padres are smaller market. Mets would dominate just like they did even with the Phillies at home. There were barely any Philly fans because Mets fans are going to show up big time right now. I think that they would still show up big time with the Dodgers, but there would be a decrease there because Dodger fans are so many rooted Brooklyn Dodger fans that become LA Dodger fans that live in that New York area still. So it depends on what way you're going to view it. From a content creator perspective, I probably want Dodgers, right? I'm going to talk to my guy D-Mac right away. He's head of Dodgers Nation over there. We'll do a preview or whatever. It's great. You want Shohei on every thumbnail. You want everything that they're going to have in Japanese. You want to absolutely hammer that market, especially if Kodai say pitches game one. But fan point of view, I think I still probably want Dodgers if I had to pick between the two. But either way, I will say this: whoever the Mets end up playing, it's nothing that they can't handle. They have faced so much adversity this year that my confidence with them is through the roof. Nothing will be easy, nothing smooth sailing. But I do think that either way, they have set themselves up for a good amount of success.
And either way, you're going to have a gauntlet. You're going to have a team that might take you 6 or 7 games. And I know you have to do the 2-3-2, but part of me really wants to, if we win, clinch another series at home. And that only happens if it's 4 or 5. And this will not be a sweep. And I'd be shocked if it goes 5 games either way. Let us know in the chat. Who do you want? Padres, Dodgers. A lot of people seem to agree with you. They want the Dodgers. Bowman, you is boss here for Wardy. We love Wardy. Edwin Conde, San Diego is better pitching. I trust our pitchers. I'd rather play LA. Yes, Wardy. We love you, Wardy. Mets played well against both teams this year. It'll be tough either way. Tatis is on a tear. Go off, Wardy. Yes, King. Padres are a more complete team.
I just love it.
Bowman, you is a boss. Is Wardy's number one fan. Padres are a more complete team. Dodgers are very flawed. Who's D-Mac born in Palouse? Don't want anyone. I want the Mets to win. Mets, let's go. So either way, it's tough. And I do love also the cool storyline of Lindor versus Ohtani.
Yeah,
the guy who's gonna win
a great
the MVP
point. I didn't even say that.
Versus the guy who's really our MVP and should win overall MVP. That is a heck of a story. And
could you imagine, especially if it's like, say it goes 7 games and Lindor's the better between the two? Like, they're still going to give it to Shohei, but literally at that point, Lindor would have proved everything. Everything. There's no debate at this point. There shouldn't be. Yes, I know he's got over 50-50, but at the same time, Jake, I'm going to pull it. All right, after you throw the first one time, you get that big lead if you're not getting thrown out. You got expanded bags. I'm using that because, by God, if we had guys back in the day, that were some of the best. Think of Billy Hamilton right now. He'd have 100 stolen bags.
Billy Hamilton, what a name. You mentioned Nick Plummer, Billy Hamilton. You got anyone else? Yoshi Shinjo, you want to throw out Jorge Toca? You remember Jorge Toca?
I do remember Jorge Toca. A guy that just popped in my head because he was one of my favorite Mets and kind of my earlier fan, really being locked in more with him on the day by day. And that's the pre-Jeff McNeil, as I like to call him. And that is one TJ Rivera. First guy I think of right away who I was a huge fan favorite. Him and Assman Cabrera. Those guys are the best.
Well, it's fitting that you meant TJ Rivera, who had the dildo in the locker, and then you mentioned the ass man. Dildo, ass.
I know. They tend to go in hand. Just
like
depends on who you're talking to.
Peanut butter and jelly. You know? Dildo and ass. And this is the Mets Magic Podcast. Jake Brown, Wardy, NYM. I think that's a cool story. And, at the end of the series, if it is Mets Dodgers, I want to be saying, show hey nah show hey goodbye. Jesse Winker could wave goodbye to show hey Ohtani.
Jesse would do some really out of pocket shit that I probably can't say on air, so I won't, but I'll just say Jesse's the type to do some one-hit shit. I could definitely see it happening.
I mean, Jesse's the type to have the only guy with a black wife beater walking around where everyone's, it seemed like he was kind of lonely at times, like just he was in the corner
and he's like French inhaling that cigar, just taking it all back.
We know Jesse, smokes that gas. Like that was very clear that
there was zero hesitation. Yeah, you don't smoke a cigar like that unless
Jesse was smoking something else after. And I love that the team went out and celebrated together.
That was awesome.
This team deserves an actual they had to celebrate and then have champagne all over them on a charter flight. Like they are immediately flying somewhere. Now they get a little break, which in some ways I feel like hurts them because they've been playing so well, playing day after day, that the layover, look, it hurt the Phillies.
I talked about that too. Yeah.
I think it hurts a little bit. I'm not that scared about it, but it does hurt a little bit. But either way, you talk about Padres' destiny. This Mets team is a team of destiny. Like you said, Padres, some great starting pitching. Michael King is just having an incredible year. He's making them, worry about the, Soto trade a little bit.
Oh, it was a great trade for the Padres. I really, from the beginning, I liked that just because Soto, they were never going to bring back. They were never going to be able to get that contract done with Seidler gone. It just wasn't going to happen.
We actually have a Yuki Matsui who's always in the chat, and he's actually a pitcher on the Padres. So
he is. He's a big follower of all Mets content. I've known him all year long. I've seen him in like every chat imaginable. Yuki knows what's up. It's hilarious.
I think that's a sign they're going to play the. We're going to have someone in the chat that's a member of the Padres, and it's just a sign. Bowman wants to know, will Winker do some shit involving a dildo? Well, who knows? We'll find out. We never know with Jesse Winker. What's the most you would pay Manaea in the offseason? I think you got to give him somewhere like a 5-year, $100 million deal. I think Sean Manaea has been a glue guy, great clubhouse guy, tremendous on the mound, stepped in as the ace was out without Senga, who, by the way, Senga, I think, should start game one. I would imagine could give you 4, maybe 5 innings, depending on the pitch count. But I'm giving him 5 years on 100, something around there.
Yeah, I haven't put much thought into the offseason contract breakdowns yet, but for Sean, I think most I would do is 5 in that range. He's going to be looking for a bag, though. I would be a little surprised if Manaea doesn't shoot for the stars, given this is a huge contract year, but he's also come off as a very selfless human being who I think is very much priding himself on his environment around him. I mean, something that many people don't necessarily know, but Padres fans know very well. This is why they hate Sean Manaea. It's not just because Sean Manaea was absolutely god-awful 2 years ago in the playoffs for them, but more so because Sean openly said to close out the year before they were departing how, basically he was kind of lazy. He did dial back a little bit there in San Diego. Like he didn't have the right mentality, and that went in hand with his play. I think Sean is really went in with what the Mets have thrown with not only Germany Hefner, but their pitching lab to have him make the Chris Sale-esque adjustments. So I think that's going to help bode them well to keep him for more years. I'm fine with the north of 5-year deal. You just have to have options on that. I don't want 5 guaranteed. That's just me being stubborn, thinking in like the Stearns way, knowing that Sean's great right now, but I don't think Sean's going to be pitching like this 2 seasons from now. I'd love to be proven wrong, but for right now, I think he's great. Similar to Severino. I wouldn't mind bringing Sevy back, but I wouldn't mind it if it was a long-term deal. I think there needs to be context, have some interesting clauses. Okay, Sean, if you throw this amount of innings here at, in year 2 or year 3, then you'll be able to come back for this amount. Kind of similar to what we've done with Kodai Senga, and then you have the vesting contract with Justin Verlander. Just get creative with your contracts is what I think the Mets should find themselves doing. So they're not just blatantly just throwing out millions when we've already learned the hard way what to do and what not to do in those areas since Steve Cohen became owner.
Yeah, I think Severino probably goes elsewhere. I don't think they're going to be able to bring both back or will bring both back. But guess what? We're not really caring about offseason contracts right now because we're worried about the National League Championship Series. And I'm glad you mentioned Jeremy Hefner because he's a guy no one really mentions, a guy that, me and probably others called for firing last year with how bad the
we've all had our moments. Yep.
We like, and people will go back and comment. It's like, come on, you were thinking the same. Just because it changed a year later doesn't make the point wrong then. But by God, I mean, everyone has gotten better this year, and everyone middle of the pack starters and relievers have turned into Cy Young candidates like David Peterson, and he deserves a lot of praise. Bowman comments he thinks he might go to be a manager somewhere. Well, I think the Mets need to do all they can at this point to bring Jeremy Hefner back.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big reasons why Hefner stayed in the organization, unlike any other guy in the coaching staff for the most part since Steve became owner, is not only because of him being a recent former player as a former New York Met, making a smooth transition into coaching right away, but they really value him even at a front office level. Something that has been swept under the rug that no one's talked about this year is that the Mets have at least pondered that has been of consideration heading into the offseason. Jeremy Hefner potentially being in a larger role than just as pitching coach, not necessarily manager, but actually in the front office, working more with David, being a more part of that group and how to really get the best when it comes to development and other aspects of the organization. So Hefner is going to be a very desirable player yet again this offseason from a coaching standpoint, because teams have called for him. They have shown interest on him on potential managerial openings, and he has decided to stay with the Mets. So could this be the difference maker if the Mets do the thing and have themselves an even bigger run than what they're doing right now? Sure. Maybe that will be the time he gets the bag and he's out of here. Or this could be the start of Hefner's continuation in the organization into something much greater than I think fans currently see.
Yeah, if they keep him, I mean, from top to bottom. You talk about the owner that's invested. He said goodbye to day-to-day at .72. You talk about David Stearns, mastermind at the top. You talk about a manager who has been an absolute home run for the Mets in Carlos Mendoza. What a hire. He's been magnificent. And then down to the players and Jeremy Hefner as well. And a guy who I addressed in the beginning of the year, John Gibbons. I think no one mentioned the bench coach, but having that veteran, Mendoza gets all the credit. Gibbons will get none. But Gibbons is a part of this. There are decisions that are made by Mendoza because of Gibbons that we don't know about, that we'll never know about, that only them two know about. And he'll never get any credit. But having that right-hand man with all the experience that he does, I want to give him a mention on this show. But back in the Wilmer Flores days, Wardy was 5 days in Flushing. SNY now has the 10 days in Flushing. It began on Monday the 30th with the miraculous game in Atlanta that sent the Mets to the playoffs. It went to Milwaukee and ended in Milwaukee with the Pete Alonso 3-run homer. And on Wednesday, October 9th, on day 10 of the 10 days in Flushing, it ended in Flushing with a New York Mets series win. And now they move on to the National League Championship Series. We'll see who it is. I think it's destiny, Wardy. We'll close with this. I think a Subway Series World Series is on the horizon. It's all the makings in the car. And I don't care who we play. The Yankees would be cool. I think it would be cool to have 7 potential games in New York, not have to worry about going to Detroit or Cleveland, which would suck. But it just feels like a Subway Series and New York coming out on top this season.
If that does happen, I can only imagine what's going to be like to be in the city. As you and I both now and not living in those areas, I'm really curious just how much of a zoo will become beyond what it already kind of has been. So that's something I would definitely do everything in my power to try to experience. And as someone who was born in the year 2000, I didn't get a chance to appreciate that run at all, nor am I really losing sleep over it, given how it ended, unfortunately. But if this could kind of be my first taste of a Subway Series that level, I would love that. And there's just a story of it. Like let's put jinx aside. We're just talking hypotheticals right now. And all right, doesn't necessarily need to be this year, any year that we have a Subway Series World Series. Carlos Mendoza, right? Aaron Boone used to be the Aaron Boone guy. He's the heir apparent now, right? And to see them going and battling. Then you have, obviously, Giancarlo Lindor. Let's not forget that head-to-head going back to the 2021 World Series. Aaron Judge, is he going to step up in the big games? Because he's a big question mark. Poor Bear Pete has proven his worth. He will need to continue to do exactly that. All these other factors.
Luis Severino.
I know.
Up against his former team.
Could you imagine Sevy like Game 2 World Series? Like, oh my God, just insane to fathom. And then for us Mets fans, Louis Rojas, they're commanding third base. So there you go.
Bad memory.
But either way, yeah, that would be insane. I think that would probably break the internet too, truthfully, from like every podcast, every show, everything. My God, it would be bananas.
Harrison Bader too. There's endless stories with the former Mets, the former Yankees, the former
Bader
coaches.
wants vengeance. Yeah.
The storyline of Mets Yankee Subway Series is enough to write a book off of, and then you add all the player and coach layers. It's just could be. I keep using the word cinema, but this has really been cinema. It's been a movie, and the movie must continue, and it starts in San Diego or LA. We'll find out in 10 hours, and can't wait for this series. Whoever they play, I just love watching this Mets team. I love how they play together. I love how they love each other, and it's a tight-knit unit, the tight-knit clubhouse, and all of us content creators coming together and full of joy. I was with Mark and James the other night at Murphy's after the game in Astoria, celebrating together, and it's just one of these special seasons. At 9 years old, you said you were, what, 2 years old in 2000? How old were you?
No, I was born in 2000.
You were born. What month were you born?
I was born end of August.
Okay, so you were
like
2 months.
Legit, like had no fucking clue what was going on at the time.
Yeah, he literally couldn't speak a word. So for you, it's cool because you didn't experience. For me, that was my first season as a Met fan, and full season, 99. I was like second half I got on board, but 2000, like first full year, I was like, life's gonna be great, and then it went downhill very quickly as a Mets fan. And now, could it happen again 24 years later? What were you gonna say?
I just had this very crazy thought in my head because I just put something together, and I'll let you connect the dots, and we'll leave it at that because I don't want to throw anything else out there. The year I was born, we made the World Series, right? The first year I started to watch the Mets intensely outside of a casual setting, where I'd watch them on average, maybe once, twice a week, but I was more locked in with other sports, was just a little around the halfway mark of 2015. Mets made the dance of 2015. 2024. My son Shea, SHEA, was born. That's all I'm gonna say.
I mean,
it's
destiny.
It's destiny.
It has to be destiny. For me, I looked at it. I left New York, and now they win, and they had amazing. But like they're like, "F you, Jake. We're gonna win when you leave." So for me, it's personal now. It's personal. I'm
right.
My old employer that they said goodbye, and I want the Mets to really say hello to the Canyon of Heroes come early November.
Yes, sir.
And all the storylines line up. Let's go, Mets. Win this series. Wardy NYM. Subscribe to his YouTube. Smash that like if you haven't already. Subscribe to his channel. Subscribe to this channel, Mets Magic. Subscribe to Jake Brown Radio. We'll be there covering it. We'll be covering it here on YouTube. You got to get out there for one. Go Friday night. Bring the baby. Find your way.
Not a chance. No. My parents like half jokingly said like, Green Shay. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's gonna be a zoo. Literally, the first ball that's put into play, the earth is gonna erupt around us. I'm like, I'm all for bringing him to games, just not yet. We're gonna put a pin in it for at least a year and reevaluate.
Wardy's gonna be changing diapers in Steve Cohen's owner's suite
while actively live streaming and freaking out because Alonso just made it a 4-1 Mets lead. Like that just.
Put the headphones. Just put one of these. The babies with these. They got those things that go over the noise canceling. The Bose noise canceling. Shea will survive. And from Shea to the city. And the last time the Mets clinched at home was at Shea. Now they do it at City. And maybe there's another clincher this round. Maybe next round. But either way, let's go to the dance and let's win this damn thing, Wardy. Thank you so much for coming on Mets Magic. And hopefully we'll be talking down a trip down the Canyon of Heroes because we've made it before. You saw them make it in 2015. I saw them make it in 2000, but we are yet to win a ring in our lifetime. And there would be no better team than this Mets team, which has been the most fun of our lives to win one.
Absolutely. And look, even if they don't get there, what a run this year has been. In a so-called punt year, the Mets are having a deeper playoff run they've ever had under Steve Cohen. There's just so many great positives to take away and to build off of this year. And you're telling me the year isn't even done yet? That the best may have yet to come? Sign me the hell up, Jake. Thank you for having me on. Always a pleasure.
Let's go. Great stuff from Wardy. We'll talk to him soon. He is fantastic. Make sure you subscribe to his channel as well. Geez, I feel old when you said you were in 2000. I remember watching that entire Subway Series in a bar out in the Caribbean, LFGM. Yeah, Wardy was born. I was 9. Like I was in like 4th grade. I did a pizza and soda pop party to watch it with my friends. I mean, It's destiny, guys. Like, if you watch that game against the Phillies, the Grand Slam, everything that's happened in these 10 days in Flushing, write the book, write the movie. It's going to be an award winner. It's destiny. We'll be back after game 2, no matter who they play. It's going to be, what system you use for dual screen looks really good. This is on StreamYard, is the site, is a commonly used site. But it has all the field. It can't end in San Diego. It can't end in LA. It can't end here at Citi Field in 5 games. We must go on. There would be no better team in our lifetime than this Mets team, the OMG Grimace Gay Mets, whatever you want to call them, the Purple Mets. It just can't end here. The buck goes on. It can't end. Let's go, Mets. F the Padres, F the Dodgers. Let's win the whole damn thing. See you soon, Yankees, Tigers, whoever we want to play. We are destiny. This team is magical. And I started Mets Magic. Name the podcast was apropos because this team has been magic. And nothing says Mets magic like a trip down the Canyon of Heroes, like a 3rd World Series ring, like the first World Series ring of anyone's lifetime under the age of 39. 0 through 38, we're waiting. Now give us our one. Put the ring, not the middle finger, on this finger. I don't know. This finger? Put the ring on one of these fingers. And we'll wear it around the city forever. And we'll be grateful for all the ineptitude, the collapses in 07 and 08, the World Series loss of the Royals, World Series loss of the Yankees, the wild card losses to the Giants and the Padres. Just give us one. We're right there. Let's win another round. Let's get there. Let's get to the Fall Classic. But man, what a 10 days. What a season. Can't wait for the National League Championship Series. And we'll be back on Mets Magic Podcast probably after game 2. I might, after every game, try and do one on my own YouTube. There's a chance I'm going to all 3. So I'll 3, 4, 5. I may have been offered for free, which I'm still wrapping my head. I got a text last night. There's a chance I'm going to be at all 3. So if you're there, can't wait to see you. Let's celebrate together. And we get at least 2, probably 3 more home games in Queens. And boy, if you were at game 3 and 4 at Citi Field, it was truly remarkable. Electric City, Party City. And we partied at the block party together. But the party ain't done yet. Let's keep it rolling. What a season, man. Subscribe, smash that thumbs up, comment, tweet me, Jake Brown Radio, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, all that. Follow me. Appreciate the support during what has been a fun first season of Mets Magic. Oh, man. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let's win this damn thing. Let's go, Mets.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Mets Magic on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.